I had an excellent reading month in June. I read so many good books, so let's get right into it. As always, I'll start with my stats. So in June, I read a total of 18 books, DNF'd 1, which gave me a grand total of 6,309 pages with 69.5 hours of audiobooks. This was easily one of the best months that I've had so far of the year. Actually, this was second best, so I love that for me. The only month that's beat it so far was April, and that was by less than 1,000 pages, so this was a really good month for me. I felt like a reading machine in the entire month. It was great. So the one book that I DNF'd was 9 Bar Blues. This was for Backless Bash. It had been on my TBR for 5 whole years, and I finally picked it up. It's a collection of short stories. I feel like maybe if I read it at a different time, I might have liked it more, but I had just read a different anthology the week before, and I think I just wasn't in the mood to do another anthology, so sadly a DNF, but I might pick it back up again in the future and give it another try. Moving on to my book clubs and challenge reads. First up is the Buzzword Challenge. This month's prompt was to read a book with memory words in the title, and I picked The Memory Librarian by Janelle Monáe. This was the other anthology that I read. This one was excellent. It did take me a bit to get into it, and of course with any anthology there were of course 1 or 2 stories that I didn't like as much, but overall this was such a solid collection of stories. Their writing is absolutely stunning, which I knew it would be because their lyrics are beautiful, and that definitely translated well into prose. It was very lyrical, all of the writing was so beautiful. Even during the stories where I wasn't as interested in the plot, I was still mesmerized by their writing style, so I still enjoyed all of the stories, even though some of them weren't as strong as other ones. And overall I gave it a 4-star. And then the Buzzword Covers Challenge was for something celestial on the cover, and I went with Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan. I'm not sure if it's YA or adult. I think it's more like new adult. I would guess that she's maybe like 20-ish for the majority of the story, so it's kind of in between. But this one is about the Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Her mother had her in secret, and when people start to suspect that she had a daughter, the daughter escapes and ends up kind of hiding in plain sight and joins the Celestial Kingdom army and becomes really good friends with the Crown Prince. This was excellent. I really enjoyed this story. I love fantasy books that are retellings of stories from different cultures' mythology, and this one was a very good example of one of those. This one was inspired by the Chinese legend of the Moon Goddess. I loved the characters, the romance was great. I love the villain too. This kind of villain is exactly what I like, where yes, he's villainous, but it's like you can almost understand where he's coming from. The kind of villain where he doesn't see himself as the villain, so it's like neither side is good, neither side is bad. It just kind of is, and I think that was so interesting. But my favorite thing in here was definitely the magic system and the dragons. There was so much cool stuff in here. I really enjoy this story, and I can't wait to get to the sequel, and I gave it a strong 4-star. For the in-person book club that I'm part of this month, we picked Every Heart a Doorway by McGuire. This was my 4th time reading this book in full, and it's the start to my favorite series in the entire world, so of course I gave it 5 stars. If you haven't heard of the series somehow, this takes place at a school for children who at some point in their lives found a magical door that took them to a different portal universe where they ended up finding their home and feeling like they really belonged, but for some reason or another they had to come back to our world, and now they can't cope with the loss of their home and their magic and that kind of thing. So the school is for children to go to either try and reacclimate to the real world or wait for their door to open again. I love this series so much. It feels like coming home. And it was really fun being able to read this for a book club. Everybody loved the book, and we had some really good discussions about it, and now I think most of book club is going on to read the rest of the books as well. So I'm just getting all of the updates as everyone's talking about reading book 2 right now, and I'm so happy about it. But yeah, I had a great time reading this book again, and now I get to have even more good memories with this book as well. And then last for the challenges, I like doing those like quarterly Goodreads challenges, and this round was ending at the end of June, and I had not done most of them, so I had a lot to catch up on, which I did manage to do all of them, and I'm very proud of that. So the first one was for the Central Reads Challenge, and I picked The Martian by Weir. This will also be a page to screen episode. I just finished this yesterday, but I did read more than half of it in June, so it counts towards my June stats. But this one is about an astronaut on Mars. He and his team get caught in a really severe windstorm, and they have to evacuate and scrub the whole mission, but on the way back to the ship he ends up getting injured, and they have have to assume that he's dead. So they leave him, but he actually did survive, and now he is alone on Mars where no one knows that he's alive and he has no way to contact NASA. So he just has to try and survive for 4 years until the next Mars mission comes. This was such a good book. Oh my god, it was amazing. I had seen the movie previously, but I also rewatched it again last night, and while I love the movie, the book is so much better. It's so much more detailed, there's a lot more science in it. There's a lot of science and math being thrown around that, like, I am not a science and math person whatsoever, but this was actually written in a way where it made sense to me. I was able to really easily follow along with what was happening, even though I have no knowledge of anything to do with space exploration or even just basic math skills. I don't have those, but at no point did I feel lost during this entire book. But mainly this book was about the character. I really enjoyed this kind of character, and this is truly a story about hope and not giving up and the will to survive. This character is so resourceful and driven, and he's hilarious as well. He goes about this entire situation with lightheartedness and humor, and he never loses that throughout the course of the entire book. Even during moments where any other normal person would be fully breaking down, he'll do so, but then he still manages to crack a joke afterwards. It was a really interesting character study. Also, this book made me realize how quickly I would die if I was stranded on Mars or even just in the woods. It explains exactly what he's doing and all the math that he has to do and figuring out rations and figuring out how to grow crops and make water and all these things. And he's doing all these things that even just in a regular, like, on Earth setting, I would never have thought of. And I was reading this and I was just like, oh yeah, I would die. 100%. If I got dropped off in the middle of a gigantic forest with no way out, I would die. Absolutely. So it was a fascinating read just for that, to see how this guy was trying so hard to survive and all of the really creative things that he thought of. Only very minor critique is that this main character did feel exactly like the main character from Project Hail Mary, which for me is totally fine because I love that character, but I can see that being kind of repetitive because they have like the exact same humor, the exact same kind of narrative voice. There was very little difference in their characters that I could tell, at least, which again for me, not a bad thing, but for others might be a negative. But overall, I absolutely adored this story. It had me howling with laughter, it had me crying, it had me on this whole roller coaster of emotions, and I had to give it a full 5 stars. Next up was the Heritage Reads Challenge, and for this one I read Immaculate Conception. This was also part of a read-along that Audrey over at Perpetual Pages was hosting. This book fucked me up. Oh my god. I don't know if I'm smart enough to like really articulate my thoughts on it, but this book was fucked in so many kinds of ways, and it was fascinating. This one is a speculative, like, sci-fi almost. It's based in, I think, the near future, I'm pretty sure. So it's very similar to our world, but just has like slightly better technology, more AI, that kind of thing. This book follows our main character over the course of decades of her life. The majority of it is set when she is going to art school and she meets this girl, and the two of them become inseparable. And it's a story about art and obsession, and it had lots to do with agency and bodily autonomy and consent and boundaries and all of these things that were exploited in really sinister ways. It was such a weird little book and so creepy and horrifying in ways that I didn't really expect. This main character, so she meets this girl when she's, I think they're like probably 18 or so, and this girl is like an art prodigy, right? Like, she is such an incredible artist, and the main character feels intense jealousy towards her but also has a lot of respect for her, and it's just this constant battle of like respecting her but also wanting to be her but also wanting to tear her down at the same time, and just watching as their relationship twines them closer together but also farther apart at the same time. And then things get real messy later on in the book, and it was really not expected. There's definitely a lot of triggers in this. There's death of a child, there's issues with consent in here, loss of agency, a whole bunch of things that were explored really, really in depth. The main character grew up rather poor, and she was brought to this art school on a scholarship where she was all of a sudden surrounded by all these rich people for the first time, and she's kind of seeing how they treat people and how they manipulate and exploit, and they don't care about people, and she has all these thoughts and opinions on this type of person. And you watch her over the course of her life just gradually become those exact people, and honestly a hell of a lot worse than most of them. And she becomes this monster of a person, and she has no idea that she's like that. She has no accountability, no self-awareness. She still sees herself as this kind of innocent poor person from the fringes of society that everyone looks down on, whereas in reality she has built a lot of power, and she uses that power to exploit the people around her. And that's kind of the whole point of this book, is just watching her go through that. And yeah, this was a horrifying novel. It was so well written. While reading this, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was talking about it to every person who would listen, basically. This book completely took over my brain the entire time that I was reading it, and I had a phenomenal time with it, so I also gave it a full 5 stars. For the Armchair Explorer prompt, I read Into the Drowning Deep by Mira. I also read this for Backless Bash. This one was so cool. It's a sci-fi horror novel about a bunch of scientists on a ship that's owned by an entertainment company, and they are sailing out to the Challenger Deep trying to find mermaids. With horror books, I love that feeling of being watched and that kind of creeping sense of dread, but I find that a lot of books don't do that very well, and I'm kind of always looking for that, and this book very much did it. It was written in a very matter-of-fact, almost flat way, but that's exactly what made it so frightening. I think that was very much intentional, and it was very successful, where that sort of monotone narration style really added to the tension, I found, because they're out in the middle of the ocean and the ocean does not care about you. So it kind of felt like that, where it was just like these horrible things were going to happen to these people and there wasn't a damn thing that anyone could do about it, and there was nobody around to witness that or to care. This was a fascinating book. Again, there was lots of science in here, and the science was like well explained to the point where I didn't feel lost at all. I actually understood it, so kudos to Mira for being able to do that, because this little brain is not science-based at all. But I was happy that I was able to actually understand and follow along with what was going on. This was a fantastic book. I'm so glad that I finally read it. It had been on my TBR for 5 entire years, and I'm mad at myself for not having picked it up earlier. But at the same time, I think that if I had read it 5 years ago, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I did now. So it all worked out, and I gave this one a 4.5 star. And last for the Goodreads challenges was the Rainbow Reads, and for this one I read A Gentleman's Gentleman. This one is a historical romance featuring I think he was a duke, I'm pretty sure, who kind of becomes a recluse because he is transgender and nobody knows that. But there's a clause in his estate where he has to get married by the age of 25, otherwise he will lose his estate. So he has to go out for the season. He hires a valet, and it becomes a romance between him and his valet. This was such a sweet story. I love historical romance featuring trans characters. It's one of my favorite subgenres. I just love being able to see myself in that setting, and even though it's fiction, it just serves as a nice reminder that trans people have always been here and we will always continue to be here, and it's just really nice being able to see ourselves be happy in historical settings. And yeah, this book just brought me a lot of joy. It wasn't perfect, there were definitely some plot things that could have been better and some pacing issues, but this made me so happy. It had a huge smile on my face the whole time, and I had a great time reading it, so I gave it 4 stars. For Backless Bash for this month, I read a few things. So Into the Drowning Deep I've already talked about, as well as DNFing 9 Bar Blues. So the first one that I actually finished for Backless Bash was Phoenix Extravagant. This book is a lovely combination of fantasy and sci-fi because it has magic, but it also has mecha stuff, which was great. The main character is an artist living in their homeland that has been colonized by their neighboring country, and they really don't care for politics at all. They're just trying to survive and live their life, but they end up getting roped into working for the government. The magic system relies on artists to paint magic into these masks, and the masks are what give their mecha robot things life. So the main character starts this job and learns that the government actually has this gigantic mecha dragon, and it was cool as fuck. And yeah, things kind of go from there. It's a whole lot of political intrigue, really interesting family dynamics, friendships, that kind of thing. This book was a wild ride. I had such a good time reading it. The pacing was a little bit iffy for me at first, but about halfway through it got really, really good. And yeah, just overall this was a really solid read, and I gave it a 4 star as well. Next up was The Bright and Breaking Sea. This one is a pirate fantasy, and in this world people can be kind of aligned to the different elements. So the main character is the captain of the Queen's ship. She's aligned to water, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what happened in this book. The vibes were great. I loved the setting. The characters were really fun, but the plot and the politics and everything kind of lost me. I know that the main point of the plot was that they were looking for somebody. There was a guy who was like kidnapped or something, and he was important to something, but I don't really know what happened. I liked this book enough to finish it. It was well written. Again, the writing style was great, and I liked the characters and the setting, but I got to the end and I was just like, What did I just read? So I'm glad that I finally read it. I really doubt that I'll read the sequel. I don't regret reading it. It wasn't like a bad book or anything. It didn't really stand up to me. It wasn't that special. So I landed on a low 3.5 stars for it. And then the last one for Backlist Bash was Beetle and the Hollowbones by Aliza Layne. This one is a graphic novel about a goblin who has this little blob ghost friend who is stuck in the mall, but the mall is going to be torn down soon. So she has to try and figure out how to help her friend before it's too late. This was a cute story, but again, just wasn't really that special to me, I found. I'm glad that I read it. I doubt that I'll read the sequel, but it was at least a quick read, and I gave it a 3-star. For my sequels this month, I only read 2 sequels. Oops. I had a whole bunch on my TBR, and I did not prioritize sequels this month at all. But the 2 that I did read, the first one was Realm of Ash by Tasha Suri. This is the sequel to Empire Sand. I'm not gonna lie, I don't have a damn clue what I read for this book. I was trying. Genuinely, I was paying attention, I was engaged, I was trying so hard to follow along, and this book just did not click at all. It took me until 20% of the way through to figure out that we weren't even following the same main character as the first book. Book 2 follows the sister of the main character from book 1, and I did not realize that because I was reading it and I was just like, what are you talking about? Because she was talking about, you know, her past and like people dying and this thing happening, and I'm just like, when did that happen? What is going on? And then I realized, oh, we're following the sister. That explains why I'm so confused. So once I figured that out, I was like, okay, surely things will make more sense now. So I kept reading it, and things still didn't make any sense. So I looked up a recap of book 1, and that didn't help, and I was still really confused. But then I thought to myself, you know, at some point, I'll keep reading this, and eventually things will click, and I'll start to get it. So I kept reading it, and all of a sudden, I was at 80% of the way through, and I still had not one clue what was going on. I liked the characters. The main character and the love interest were both fantastic. I really enjoyed them both individually, but also their banter was really good. They had good chemistry. Their writing was very pretty as well. So I still enjoyed this book to some degree, but in terms of the plot, I did not have any idea what was happening. I didn't know what the plan was. I didn't know where we were going or why we were going there or what we were gonna do once we got there. I was so lost the entire time. So sadly, I gave this one a 2-star. And then the other sequel that I read was The Kraken Sacrifice by Katee Robert. This is the sequel to The Dragon's Bride, and this was fine. It was basically the exact same book as the first one, just with different characters. The first book was a dragon and a human, and the second book was a kraken and a human, but other than that, it was literally like beat for beat the same plot. And there's also a plot point in here that I really don't like. Just personally, nothing wrong with it, it's just not my preference. So while this was fine, and I'll still carry on the series, or at least do one more book and see how I'm feeling about it, this was just kind of an okay read. So I gave it a 3-star. And then the rest of my reads for this month were just mood reading. So first up for those ones, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by B. Schwab. I picked it up immediately, and I had such a great time reading this book. I do have a whole vlog for this book. If you want to hear an actual review, I will link that video down below for you guys if you want to check that out. But just very quickly, I loved this book. It was perfection. It was everything that I wanted and so much more, and I gave it a full 5 stars because of course I did. Next up, I read Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars. Once again, I was very confused while reading this book because it's a fantasy book, but that's told as a memoir sort of, and I genuinely couldn't tell if this was an actual like non-fiction memoir that the author was choosing to tell in a sort of fantastical way and all of the fantasy parts were just metaphors, or if it was just an actual fantasy book. It took me quite a bit to figure that out, I'm not gonna lie. I did eventually learn that this is just a fantasy book, but by that point I was just real confused, and I did enjoy it. I liked the characters a lot. The plot had me fully lost for most of it. There was a lot of metaphor that just went right over my head basically, but the characters were great and I really enjoyed the setting of it as well. So I ended up giving it a 3.5 star, and I might want to reread this at some point. Maybe now that I know more about it. I think I would get more out of it if I read it again at some point. Will I actually? Who knows? Probably not though. Next up was Love and Other Conspiracies. This was so good. Oh my god, I love this book. This one is a rom-com where the main character is a producer on like basically like a BuzzFeed kind of thing where they run a whole bunch of like online series and shows. She has to pitch a new show idea and she finds this guy with a podcast online talking about cryptids and that kind of thing. So she brings him in to start a show, but he ends up being really awkward and uncomfortable in front of a camera, but the two of them have really good banter. So her bosses tell her that she has to join him on the show. He fully believes in all these cryptids kids, and she is a complete skeptic, and the two of them just bounce off of each other really, really well. If you like BuzzFeed Unsolved, you will love this, because this was that exact dynamic of Shane and Ryan, except it becomes a romance, and it was just so fun and nerdy and stupid and such a great time. It had me laughing the whole time, but it also had some more serious parts to it as well. It was a really well-balanced book, and I know this author is coming out with a second book, like not in the same series, but like a similar sort of thing. I can't think of what it's called, but I'll put a picture up here. But yeah, this was a delightful book, and I gave it a 4.5 star. After that was Just a Pinch of Magic by Alicia Dow. I love this author. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read all of her YA stuff so far, so I wanted to pick up her middle grade book as well. This one was adorable. This book follows two witches. One of them was raised with magic and has always lived in this town that is just for witches, and the other one was not raised with her magic, so she's new to everything, and she and her dad have just moved into this town. There is something evil afoot, and these two main characters might be at fault for it, so they have to try and deal with it, and at the same time they're also trying to get their dads to go on a date, and it was so cute. I did find the ending to be not the best. The whole book was pretty dramatic because it is middle grade, you know, like these characters are 12 years old, so of course there's going to be a level of like dramatics that is expected, and was actually quite enjoyed, but the ending of it just ramped up the drama by like 300% to the point where it was just kind of ridiculous. So for that reason I gave it a 3.5 star, but still really enjoyed it and do recommend it if you're looking for a cute middle grade. And then finally the last book for this month was They Bloom at Night. I was really hesitant with this book because I did read She is a Haunting by this author a few months ago and I really didn't like it, so I figured I would give this one a shot and see if it was just that book or if it was the author that I don't like. And it was a rocky start. I wasn't loving it at first. I was really enjoying the setting and the horror elements to it, but I really didn't care for the characters. But eventually I ended up really liking the characters as well. The setting and the creepiness just got even better. This one is set in Louisiana, and it's after this like algae parasite thing has kind of taken over the water, and it's this like slow creeping kind of infection. It had a lot of body horror in it and mutations. It was really cool and really creepy and absolutely disgusting. So the horror elements were so well done, and especially in this setting, the audiobook narrator did a really good job with the accent. It made it really atmospheric, and it also had lots to do with identity and finding yourself and that kind of thing. And yeah, this was a really solid read. I had a great time with it. I gave it a 4 star, and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a good creepy horror novel. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in June. Let me know if you've read any of these, and also let me know what your favorite read of June was, as well as your least favorite. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will catch you in the next video.